Hello. So one of the most annoying parts about my shaders for a bit now has been that they require some amount of Blender setup. This changes that. So for the past couple weeks I've been working on a tool that will let you set up these eyes entirely inside Unity. It does it in a performant way in that you add no meshes to your avatar, it merges with your face, and yeah, let's start. So in this case, we'll be working with 3 separate avatars today. Each one provides its own unique case that the tool can handle. Each situation builds on the last to an extent, so we'll start over here and work our way up. If stuff that I show here covers your avatar, then you can just stop watching after I work on this. The 3 avatars that I'll be working on today are Mariana by Astrofluff, Aurora Radon by RPG Slayer, and Meridian by Gil. All 3 can be found in Gumroad. Okay, just one more note before we start. If you're comfortable with Blender, you should probably stop watching now and go watch the Blender tutorial. It'll be faster for you and much more flexible. But if you're not, then this will likely be the quicker option. And just before we get started, one final warning I should say. The tool has been thoroughly tested, but there's always the chance that something could go wrong and you don't want to mess up your project in that case. So always make sure to do a backup. The Creator Companion makes it super easy to do. I back up before installing almost anything into my projects nowadays because it's just as simple as one click and wait for it to finish. That being said, I don't anticipate this will break any projects. I've tested, I've had my friends test, and it's looking to be all good. But yeah, let's get started. So upon installing the package that comes with any of my eye shaders, a new tab will appear at the top called Sec. Under it, it will have a Tools section with the EyeInstaller tool. So the EyeInstaller tool has a few main sections that will progressively unlock as you do each individual thing. So we're going to start here with Mariana, and I'm actually going to drag the avatar to the bottom. That way we get a better idea for this. So you should start by setting up your avatar like you would to upload, or if you have an avatar that's already been uploaded, great. And then drag your avatar into the top slot and click Detect Eye Bones. Now it's important to note that if your avatar is not humanoid or doesn't use eye bones, I've only run into one case of this, but still possible, then this will not work. And you'll have to use the Blender install. But most people's avatars should have eye bones. So yeah, if it works, you'll see that left eye bone will be mapped and right eye bone will be mapped. And on your avatar, you should start to see some highlighted dots. These are the vertices that have been detected to be weighted to those eye bones and will be what gets removed later down the line, or not, which I'll cover in the second case. So there are a few settings here. Highlight affected vertices just turns on and off the highlighting, which is helpful later, and highlight or vertex indicator size, you can make the little dots bigger if your avatar is particularly big. That can be very helpful. So put it this for now. And yeah, so we're ready to go on to the next step. This is specifically for avatars that have this sort of like floating eye bag, is what they're called, situation where the eyes are inside like a cavity. You start by clicking Create Eye Meshes. It's going to create these 2 big circles. Click on one, and most importantly, you want to be doing what we're going to do next on the prefab itself. So when you click, it'll highlight the circle, but you want to make sure you click the prefab. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to position this mesh exactly how we would want our eyes to be. So I'm going to make it small. We're going to move it forward, smaller, and move it into place exactly how we would want our eyes to be. So this is pretty easy to do if you have an existing set of eyes. You can just line it up till it looks nice. can be a little bit tricky, but for someone who isn't familiar with Blender, this is probably much easier. Typically, you want your eyes slightly taller than they are wide. It just makes for a better effect. Double check, everything looks pretty good there, it's lined up. And I'm going to copy the component. If your avatar is symmetrical, it's super easy to line up the second eye. You just select its prefab, paste component values, and now you want to invert these settings until it lines up. If it looks like it jumps off somewhere where it shouldn't be, then you probably don't want to invert that setting, like in that case. Now we have both the eyes in the same spots. And once that is done, we need to select an object for them to merge with. So in this case, I have access to my face mesh, which is a good option. Some avatars only have a body or don't have a face mesh or something like that. Choose the thing that's like closest to the face, which might be the body. Typically you don't want to select anything like hair or ears, something that's part of the main body. So we slot that in, and now we have a decision to make. In this case, we want to remove these little places with the highlighted vertices, the old eyes. So we're going to want to select merge eye meshes and delete highlighted vertices. And there we go. We're now done. We are now set up, and you can see that if we come into the descriptor, we check the eye previews, you can see that the eye bones are working and my eyes have been installed. We're now at that point ready to place any eye shader that you want on it. Editing Zach here, and it occurred to me that I never showed how to reverse this change if you mess up or if you just don't want the ASEAN. So how to do it is you select face mesh, and you'll notice that the mesh itself has been changed to like face or whatever the mesh is previously called with a bunch of numbers behind it. Simply select that and find your original face and install it. You'll also have to remove two materials from your materials that are added there automatically to accept the eye materials. Normally, if you can't like find the mesh in there, if you go to where your avatar is stored, so in this case Mariana FBXs, and you expand like the FBX, you should be able to find it. So in that case, there's my face. So yeah, that's how you do that. So that was case one. Pretty straightforward and very quick, right? But there are some more complicated situations which we'll get into in case two. So, just like before, we are inserting our avatar and detecting eye bones. This is where it gets handy to slightly turn up the indicator size with a bigger avatar. Now in this case, you'll see there's something weird here. You've got the main eyes, but then there's other glowing vertices like around back. In addition, there's these little pieces here that we might want to keep. So if we look inside the head, you can see that this avatar has some meshes in here that are attached to the eye bones and are used for certain like expressions. We can see those if we check the blend shapes of the body, confused eyes, star eyes, etc. So we might want to keep those expressions. Now, if you don't want to keep those expressions or stuff like this, you can just continue on exactly like case one. But if you do want to keep the expressions, then we need to do a little bit of extra work here. So there's a section here called Vertex Deletion Mask. It's a little pop-out. This essentially lets you mask out areas where you don't want vertexes to be deleted, or vertices to be deleted, that are attached to your eye bones. So the way we work with this is we find our avatar, and we want to find the texture that contains its eyes. In this case, you can see here, its eyes are right up there. So what we want to do is we want to open this in a program for image editing, such as Krita. Specifically, we'd want to make a duplicate and open that duplicate. So I've made a duplicate, And now we're going to wait for it to open in Krita. And we'll be back in a sec. So I now have Krita open, and I'm going to quickly show you how we can mask out these eyes. So in this case, I want only the eyes to be deleted when we insert a new eye meshes. So I'm going to make a new layer and turn off the previous layer. I'm going to fill this layer entirely black. Now, while these steps will be specific for Krita, the base idea is the same. You want a black canvas that we can paint on top of. I'm going to set the opacity for 50% for that layer and re-enable the layer underneath. This will let us see the layer underneath while still painting on the above layer. Then going to set my color to entirely white. You do definitely want a strictly white color here. You don't want any feathering or anything like that. And now we're going to come in and we're going to paint any area that we want deleted with white. It should be noted that this is related to the vertices of that area. So it's not always exactly clear where the vertices are, but it's a pretty safe bet for eyes that the vertices will be somewhere around the edge, so we want to be slightly generous if you have no immediately surrounding islands. Okay, that looks about good. And it's possible you might have to come back in here if it doesn't work out. So we're going to save this. Go back to our project. Oop, I forgot to turn back up the opacity. Now you can see what we're making. Save it again. Let that re-import. So now you can see that we've made this mask here. And if we slot that mask into the texture and press Update Vertices, I almost forgot about a crucial spot thing. So there are two things you need to do with that texture. One, you should ensure that rewrite is enabled. Just as simple as clicking on the texture, this will pop up under Advanced, Rewrite Enabled. Two, if the creator of the original texture put on crunch compression, this texture needs crunch compression off. After changing those two settings, we can press Apply, and then click Update Vertices. And you should see that all the vertices inside the eyes disappeared, which means that those vertices will no longer be deleted when we delete vertices later. So once you do that, setting up the eyes is the same exact way as we did before. You just create eye meshes, merge them with your face, or your body in this case, because I don't have a face. And while I'm not going to set up the meshes to save time, you'll see that when I click Merge Eye Meshes and delete highlighted vertices, only the highlighted vertices disappear and we are left with the previous stuff intact. So you can see hard eyes, for example, still intact. Okay, hide that for now. And go on to our final case. So this is the case of round, spherical eyes. In this case, we sort of have two cases that are subcases of this case. One case is when you have this concave or flat front. This is what I've seen mostly, although again, I'm not able to see every single avatar. The other case would be a case where you have a full sphere that pokes out. So in the case of a full sphere, you'll want to delete those vertices in Blender. It's very straightforward. I'm not going to cover it here, but it's just putting your model into Blender, going into edit mode, selecting all the vertices you want to delete, and pressing the delete key. That's it. Then you can return to Unity if you'd like to use the Unity setup. Let's cover this case, though, with flat eyes. In this case, it's really a matter of just lining things up. So if I expand the EyeInstaller, Tech Eye Bones, and I know in advance that I'm going to want to turn off the highlighting because it's hard to line up, create eye meshes. Oops, I just did my own mistake there. You want to press the prefab, shrink it down, And you basically want to line it up exactly like we did in the original one, just this time being careful to not have any of the mesh from behind stick through. So we're essentially putting it on top of the eye. Now, it doesn't have to be perfect, and that's the beauty of it. It can be almost perfect and still look fine. In this case, that's probably a little bit too much. So let's expand it slightly, over a little bit. That's like almost perfect. There's maybe a little bit on the edge here that could be taken out by putting this at like -9 maybe. That looks like pretty much good. And the great thing is that as long as the eye itself like has a gray border, so in this case or a black border, it will blend right in when you put eye meshes on it, when you put eye shaders on it, sorry. And so just like before, we can take this prefab, copy component, like this. Oops. Select the prefab, paste component values, and invert. And now this time, after selecting the mesh we want to merge with, in this case like the body, as we don't have a head, we want to specifically press merge eye meshes without deleting highlighted verts, because we don't want to delete the vertices that make up the rest of the eye. On doing that, we let it think, and we're good. We now have our eyes set up. And as you can see, it's almost impossible. You'd have to be looking extremely carefully to notice that these are just on top. So yeah, with that out of the way, we can see that we can add eye shaders. And just like the other avatar, when we test the preview states, they work fine. So yeah, that's how you use the tool. I'm hoping this makes stuff significantly easier for you. And yeah.